and he basically showed up to the X trials. So Drake lawyer XXXTentacion. And essentially what he showed up to do, just to kind of give you like, because we're not going to play through this whole 27-minute thing, he basically filed a motion. He did a motion to appear, which is he's appearing on behalf of Drake, and essentially then said, yo, we want to challenge this subpoena because there's a subpoena that exists for Drake to show up, right? However, Drake really don't live in Florida, right? But still, Drake is in Florida a lot, and also, probably just on a PR level, because since TMZ and everybody picked it up, it's important that Drake handles this appropriately rather than being seen like he's running from this, right? So he sent his lawyer. His lawyer went in court, and let me put this right here. Sorry, chat. His lawyer went in court and basically filed a motion to show cause, basically, which means the defense attorney who's trying to make Drake a witness of the defense needs to show proper cause to the court why the subpoena should even be issued. Again, this is probably going to be a conversation in itself, but actually I don't even know if there was a ruling today, but we could probably skim through it. So essentially, the lawyer for one of these like fucking idiots who killed X is going to say, our theory is that Drake killed X. And he's going to prove, first of all, number one, Drake doesn't have to show up because you guys didn't serve him properly. Second of all, let's talk about Drake. What proof do you have that Drake did anything or connected to any of these guys? And that's what they're going to do. So let me play a little bit of it. I'm going to skip through it a lot because I do not want you guys to fucking, get bored. Let's keep it going. And by the way, officially, happy Valentine's Day, right?
Order itself, Judge, doesn't give any reference to what the penalties would be if Mr. Graham failed to show for that deposition. I don't even think we need to get there. I think that the affidavits attached to the motion are insufficient. I don't believe that an order to show cause is appropriate given the lack of foundation in the petition. There's not only missing pages, but the things that are attached to it, the affidavits that were filed, were insufficient to warrant an order to show cause. So I don't think we need to get to the point where I would argue that even the service itself didn't go down the way that it was stated that it went down. I don't think we need to get into an evidentiary issue at this point, because I don't think the affidavits rise to the level of an order to show cause. And then if a subpoena for deposition is going to be reissued, then upon that reissuance and that possible service, then we would have an argument as to the harassing nature of it. Because at this point, I think you have a cooperating witness that corroborates that Mr. Graham has nothing to do with this case. Mr. Graham is...
Yeah, so that's the crux of the matter, right? So they're trying to, they're using a alternate, I forgot what the defense is called, but it's basically like alternate theory defense to basically say, hey, listen, we have a theory of why or how he died or who was responsible for it. Y'all didn't charge the right guy. So by us showing that it's more likely that somebody else did it, you have to let our client go, right? So it's like, if I'm locked up for something and my lawyer says, there's a 10 times more likely chance that somebody else did it than Akademiks, why the hell would you convict Akademiks? You guys must free him because, number one, you got to operate beyond a reasonable doubt, and it is pointing to the fact that someone else did it, right? So that's what this kooky attorney is trying to do, saying, somebody else did it, which is Drake, and his client didn't do it, right? However, this is Drake's attorney who at least just represented him on this appearance to squash the subpoena, basically saying, dog, check this out, bro. Check this out. We are not going to... we're not going to sit here and allow this thing to happen without you thinking about what's going on in court. You have a snitch. The snitch says he doesn't know Drake. So how could Drake pay these guys or pay anybody associated with this shit to do anything when Drake, the snitch says he never knows Drake. Here we go.
It's not listed in any report. Mr. Graham, I don't believe has been discussed whatsoever in this case, to my knowledge, other than rumor and innuendo. And I believe that if I was hired earlier, I would have probably filed a motion to quash that deposition itself. Because like I said, there needs to be some good faith showing. At least, his phone was in the area. He was in the state of Florida at the time. There's some sort of communication. There's something. And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever other than rumor and innuendo. And the problem is that someone could come take the stand and say, Elvis made me do it. You can't go then take Elvis's depo. Well, you can't anyways, but I'm just giving you an example. That doesn't rise to the level of now I get to take someone's depo because this individual said,
So to kind of give you a little bit more, context to this, right? So this is a criminal case, right? In a criminal case, the judge has a lot of authority, but he has a lot of authority in Florida. Now, when someone is a resident of Florida, he could put out a subpoena for Drake, but it won't do anything. Say if Drake lives in California, which Drake does, like he has a house in California and other places, right? They were trying to serve the California residents. Now, here's the thing. He can't lock Drake up in California, right? But if Drake comes to Florida, he could put out a warrant and Drake could get locked up, right? Now, obviously, the judge has to use discretion because potentially a defense attorney could literally say anybody. They could be like, Donald Trump told me to do it. You think they're going to put out a warrant for Donald Trump? So usually they're like, listen, you got to give us enough proof to make us feel like he's going to be a witness and somebody who would be credible and necessary to this case, that we would put a pressure on that person to show up and participate in this trial. That's what a subpoena is, right? This guy's been showing, Drake said, Drake rapped these lines. X said, if anything happened to me, it's Drake. So that's what the guy's been saying. So the judge said, all right, cool. That sounds like enough. Get Drake in here. Drake don't live in Florida though, right? Okay, bet. So now it's getting to a point where, I know TMZ said Drake is going to be giving a deposition. Drake ain't giving shit. I'm telling you this now. It's getting to a point where now Drake, where this judge is going to have to approve a correspondence to the state of California asking them to basically force Drake. Again, this is not federal court. This is state court, right? So again, and this is a witness. This ain't a guy who's charged with a crime. So they would have to petition California, and California would have to look at it and say, you know what, y'all are right. We're going to force Drake, whether by locking him up or sending a subpoena from us that he has to go, right? And if he doesn't go, we could grab him and send him there, right? Again, they try not to do this because what happens is you get kooky lawyers who could make up any loose type of arrangements. So again, the reason why Drake got this guy, his attorney over here in this case, is because Drake is looking at it like, well, it's on TMZ. If I just quote unquote hide, they're going to keep this conspiracy theory that I killed somebody or I ordered a death. So his lawyer's trying to deal with it. That's the only reason why the guy's here. Okay?
Someone made me do it. So I don't think we need to get to that point, Judge. I think prior to getting there, I don't think the affidavits attached rise to that level. I pointed out the inconsistencies in those affidavits, especially the inconsistency in the affidavit from Mr. Padilla's secretary, who says there's some subpoena dated January 19th. There is no subpoena attached dated January 19th. There is a notice, but that notice isn't even in the court file. That is a notice that was never filed. I looked online, there's no notice ever filed for that January 19th. And then the last point, and I don't even know if I need to address this, is that when you submit a subpoena and you serve someone with a subpoena, that subpoena needs to be accurate as to time, place, and what I'm going to be questioning you. You can't say, hey, and the subpoena, well, the notice itself is a little strange, but I'll address that in a second. You can't say, hey, contact my office, I'll give you a Zoom link. It's like, hey, I want your deposition. I'm not going to tell you where it's going to be. It's going to be somewhere in the state, somewhere in the county. You contact my office, I'll give you the address. There's no law that puts an onus on a deponent to contact an attorney, either the state or defense, and puts that burden on them to contact us, and we'll tell you where it is when we can.
So this is a long thing, and obviously, you know, I do due diligence of trying to read and watch before you guys, that you guys don't have to be suffering through 25 minutes when we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Essentially, this is what happened, right? So Drake owns some big ass house. So we could probably Google it. You know what I mean? We're not doxing anything. Drake, he just bought a house. Drake buys house, California, right? Look, okay. Drake just bought a $75 million house, okay? It's in California, okay? This is how simple shit really is. Drake is a celebrity. I don't think they show address here, but no, they don't. Good. They're like, okay, this is his new residence. He just bought it. This was bought last year. They're expecting him to live here, but Drake has a like $300 million house in Canada, right? Drake has many houses, right? However, it's just gonna get so complicated to serve him in Canada. They're like, yo, let's go to California. Let's go here, right? So they probably hired a process server to try to, like, you know what I mean, serve Drake here. $75 million. And what happened is they show up to this crib, right? And as beautiful as this crib is, this is how it works. Like, you're not just pulling up here, right? So there's a whole gate. There's, like, you know, there's people that work there. By the way, even at where Drake lives at in Canada, there's people that work there. So the person who tried to serve Drake didn't even see nobody. Apparently they were talking to somebody on intercom. Person was like, hey, what do you want? They're like, oh, hey, I'm here. I'm looking for Aubrey Graham. They're like, well, okay, he's not here. What do you need? They're like, oh, we got some paper for him. Paper, whatever they probably say, right? Cool. That's how they try to serve him. Now, again, Drake's a busy guy. 5 different houses all over the place, winning like a motherfucker. He's doing what he wants to do, right? He ain't see this shit. How did he see this shit, right? So, again, this is what the lawyer's trying to say. Like, yo, first of all, y'all didn't even serve him right. By the way, this is a guy who's trying to oppose it, right? So this is a guy's like, no, we served him, blah, blah, blah. No, okay, so Drake's lawyer's done basically giving his shit. Then we're going to get to this. Yo, this guy's like a hack of a lawyer, man. Like, if this guy could pass the bar, bro, if I made it into law, my nigga, I would have probably been up like a couple hundreds of M's, my nigga. Just all you got to do is bullshit.
What he thought was proper for the Zoom link. And I've had cases with Mr. Padilla before in the past. I think he's a good attorney. I think he knows what he's doing. But in
Cap, he ain't going to call him a trash attorney in front of open court.
this case, I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think the order to show cause is appropriate because of what I laid out before, Your Honor. And I think even if we did have the actual subpoena, I don't think the subpoena would have been valid because of that Zoom link. And I do want to just put on the record, Judge, where it says in the notice, which again is dated January 19th, it says Zoom details to be provided separately via email. That's the first statement. Then under that it says contact Padilla Law Group for details. Even that's confusing. So are they providing the link in an email that's going to be emailed to me and then I'll know what the link is? Or do I need to contact the office? And again, that's in the notice. It's not even, I don't even know if that's in the actual subpoena. So for all those reasons, Judge, I'm asking that the order to show cause be set aside. And then if Mr. Padilla wants to serve a future deposition, if and when that future deposition is actually served, I'll file my motion based on that, but I don't think it's right until that point.
Okay, and I'm doing a little bit of translating here. He basically said, so order to show cause is usually be like, yo, tell me why this nigga needs to be in court. They're saying we don't even got to talk about why Drake needs to be in court. This motherfucker, like, didn't even do the shit right to try to even get a deposition without the court's enforcement. So why the fuck are we using the court enforcement to drag Drake in here? Have this motherfucker like whatever. Anyway, let's hear what he says.
When wondering who Drake would hire, literally the most popular celebrity in the world, I figured here comes Brad Cohen. And even the finest attorney that money can buy will not undo what this court justly did. And I understand his arguments, but Judge, this case, and I agree with him that I wish he would have been involved earlier because he would have been privy to the arguments that we had when we laid out the reasons that Drake was involved and the motion to perpetuate testimony that this court didn't allow. However, the court did allow for his deposition to be taken, and the court alerted all parties to treat it with the same scrutiny that you would at trial in case he wouldn't be able to attend trial. The arguments that he made, I believe, are insufficient. This was domesticated in California. There was an affidavit from the attorney that did it. It's very clear that when he says that Mr. Graham isn't involved in this case, it's very clear that Cleopatra Bernard thought so when asked in deposition, why did you have security with your son that day? Because of Drake and Migos. It's very clear when Detective Curcier was asked, I'll tell you whose name came up a lot, Drake. And it's very clear that the decedent predicted if anybody kills me, it's Drake. So I understand his arguments, and I understand he's an extremely skilled attorney. However, the court...
Yo, unfortunately, this is like a classic case of us realizing when somebody says something like that, because I think that we're used to this online trolling shit. When somebody says, if anything happens to me, he did it. Or if you're beefing with someone and something happens to them, you inevitably become looked at. I won't necessarily say become one of the prime suspects, but you inevitably have to be crossed off a list.
Ruled the way that it did for a reason, and I believe that the court's ruling should stay as it is. Respect.
I don't think he addressed any of my arguments. Again, I think the affidavits speak for themselves and that they're insufficient, Judge. I don't even see a subpoena attached to the order to show cause from either California or from Florida. So I don't even think we can base an order to show cause on a quote-unquote notice that we don't know if that notice was served, and certainly we can imagine that it wasn't because that notice is dated 2 days after the alleged service. So the notice is dated 2 days after the alleged service. The affidavit makes reference to some subpoena from January 19th, 2 days after the alleged service. All these things, they don't rise to the level of an order to show cause. In fact, I think that quite the opposite is that I don't even think the service was effectuated properly with the information that's attached to that motion, Judge.
All right, let's try to skip through.
So,
Here we go.
a lot of different things raised here.
Let's hear the judge.
First of all, from the beginning, the court expressed some reservations, I suppose, about whether or not this is a witness that should be deposed. However, we felt that the defense raised at least, through what he said, the barest level to allow for discovery. We have wide open discovery here. This is a first-degree murder case. Defendants are facing potentially life in Florida State Prison, and the court doesn't want to be in a position that at some later point they say, well, but for having taken this deposition, so let's do it all over again. Now, what is necessary for a rule to show cause, see, the arguments you're making here are like what I would hear at a rule to show cause. Why shouldn't you be held in contempt? I wasn't properly served, all these things. So these are defenses, good defenses, apparently, potentially, to a rule to show cause. The issuance of the rule to show cause is not my order telling him to go to a depot. It's my order saying, defense trying to take a depot, they're presenting me with evidence and claiming proper service. 2 times prior to this, whether you're aware or not, that they had asked for this, and I said, this isn't even close to proper service, and it was denied. on this account. I said I think it's close enough where the person did not respond. I want to know why. That's the whole idea behind the show cause. Not that you are in contempt, but tell me why you weren't there. What's wrong with it? Why wouldn't you? And these are the types of things that we would hear there. So that's the purpose behind the show cause. Now, always in the show cause, we put in a purge order saying, look, if you appear for the thing, I don't even need to get involved in that as to whether or not you have an excuse or no excuse or there's a good reason or not a good reason for not appearing. So, let's understand that from the first area why the show cause is there is merely not whether or not this subpoena should or shouldn't be quashed or whether it's valid or whether it stretches the limit of discovery, but you got served and you didn't come, court wants to know why, all right? So that's what's behind that order. Now, without getting into the issues that you have raised and not having an entire evidentiary on that, you need to discuss with your client how you wish to proceed on these things. Because, again, just like the first couple of attempts, the court said, no, these are not near what would be required. This one appeared to be. There may be some defects in it. At some point, if they continue to try, they may effectuate good service.
They may. Just not yet, but I get it.
So what I'm saying is, we can quash this now, and then, at some point it gets there. So, what I would suggest is between now and the purge date or whatever, you talk with Mr. P about the potential for taking a statement or moving to quash a subpoena as if it has been properly served for whatever reasons, and we might have to have an evidentiary on that. My thought is this, in order to assure the due process rights of the defendant and the full discovery, to make sure that every avenue has been explored and nothing's been left untouched, my thought is that if your client were to have this video or this, not video, but Zoom or electronic deposition, you could certainly limit the scope and area of it. I am prepared to enter an order.
Hey, chat, I'm going to give, I know some of y'all said this is boring. Unfortunately, because I've been dealing with so much rap shit recently, and I've been dealing with rap shit when it comes to criminal shit, whether it's indictments or anything else, I feel like almost like I'm a little bit of a quasi lawyer in a sense. I'm going to tell you what's the problem with this. I've spoken to many people, legal professionals, and things like that. For an artist like Drake, a deposition is the worst thing you would want to have to do. I will, try to bring your memory back up to Lil Wayne deposition, which, by the way, probably will get leaked. So if Drake does a deposition, it will get leaked.
Well, that's not the question.
What's his name?
I don't know, but I know I did perform at this badass bitch birthday party recently. She was crazy, stupid thick. Isn't it something that you would remember if your album, The Carter 3, was the biggest selling album of the year in 2008? Isn't it something that I would remember that? Yes. Isn't that a personal opinion type question?
Okay, all right. So this is a very long thing. They chopped it up into some very funny parts by Lil Wayne. I will definitely say this. So, chat, if you actually look at and what a deposition is, they could ask you about anything. Now I know the judge is saying, "Oh, we could limit the scope, this and third." They could ask in a deposition, which still, he's supposed to tell the truth. I mean, now we can say he don't recall. Like, that's ways people kind of get around shit. Like, oh, I don't recall. I don't remember. Blah, blah, blah. You could get around it, but you can't really lie, okay? Now, in a deposition, they could ask you anything. Usually, right? Shit that don't got to do with the case. So somebody could be like, yo, they can ask him random questions like, how many songs did Quentin Miller help you write on If Your Illness Is Too Late? And if it's somehow relevant, any way how, if it's somehow relevant, he has to answer the question. So this is why you don't want somebody of Drake's status. And shit, I could imagine Lil Wayne's lawyers at the time was probably trying to prevent it. I forgot what the details was about this deposition. You don't want your client to be in a deposition. They could ask him all type of stuff. These guys are public figures. The answers are probably going to get out. And they got to tell the truth. I mean, they can say they don't remember, but, you know what I mean? Still, it could be very embarrassing moments, right? So this is why this lawyer, this judge is saying, hey, how about you talk to your client, Drake? And if Drake, you know, maybe you guys don't want to talk about certain stuff. Maybe we can limit the scope. But here's the thing about limiting the scope. A deposition is not testifying in court, right? So a deposition is just kind of like, you know, it's usually a pre-trial type of gathering of information. And we all know that Drake don't got nothing to do with X shit. They're going to just ask him all type of stuff. Yo, hey, Drake, when did you meet the mother of your child? They could ask him questions like this. Hey, when did you meet the mother of your child? Hey, blah, blah, blah. And as long as they could somehow validate it, well, yeah, well, we think he may have did something to X because X brought up his mom and he's really, like, you know what I mean, sensitive about family stuff. And, you know, obviously he got in a beef with Pusha T, so now we could ask him about his son. Bro, a deposition, you don't want a nigga like Drake. Actually, you don't want anyone. And I've talked to attorneys too. Like, whether in a civil case or, you know, a civil case, sometimes, you know, you can't avoid it. But usually you could do a good job of trying to, like, you know, suppress it. Or some people just avoid it by just settling. You don't want your client to do this, but it could be one of the things that the court forces. So this judge is trying to tell him, yo, we could try to set parameters, actually, that Drake could be asked questions, but it won't be violating questions. You're right. Here we go.
A lot of people who are titillated by, oh, look who's involved in the gossip and the rumors, and everyone just wants to run wild with these things.
Drake does a deposition, TMZ's dropping $300,000. Even if they suppress the deposition, somebody's leaking it out of that court. TMZ's going to drop $300,000 for probably a deposition that's going to go on for 2 to 3 hours. And they're going to have a 2 to 3 hour tape of Drake talking about all type of shit. They're dropping $200,000 to $300,000. Trust me, the court does its thing. But you think some clerk or somebody with access to that ain't gonna leak it for $200,000 to $300,000 to TMZ? Yeah, right.
Prepared to say that such discovery deposition shall remain sealed.
See, Thomas. Yeah, all right, bro. TMZ's gonna buy it. It's Drake, nigga. They could ask Drake in a deposition. Hey, you know, we think one of the reasons why he had issues with X is maybe over a woman. Hey, have you ever had sex with Rihanna? They could ask him anything. They could ask the nigga anything. Fuck no.
And that the court would have an opportunity for an in-camera inspection of any transcript, and that it does not be released to the public, not to be out there. There shouldn't be pictures of Drake testifying in a thing. I can understand why he's not interested in that, and shouldn't be. Bro,
if you think a clerk at this court making $89,000 a year, brother, actually definitely less, probably $60,000. You're making $60,000, and you're administrating this whole deposition shit, where Drake is getting on a Zoom link and has to tell his soul. You think you're not secretly recording that you can sell to TMZ for $500,000? Fuck if they fire you. That's if they even catch you.
Be rightfully shielded from that. And there are a number of cases that date back, I think, to 1985, including Palm Beach newspaper versus Burke at 471 Southern 2nd, 571, and Post Newsweek stations Florida versus State at 474 Southern 2nd, 344 that say the public doesn't have a right to go to discovery depositions, and these are not public record unless they're entered into the court file. And so to ensure your client doesn't suffer from having this all over the place and having to answer the questions and then it's scrutinized by the public, I'm willing to keep that under wraps unless after looking at it, I see that it meets some threshold where this would become evidence in the case. So certainly I will put that.
You hear this nigga? Essentially, if Drake says nothing that could be used as evidence, nobody will ever hear of it. We'll seal it. But if he says something that is evidence in the case, well, we got to put it out. Hell no. If I'm the lawyer, I'm like, nigga, fuck no.
That out there, and this could potentially be a very short and quick deposition. What do you know about this? Well, nothing. Did you do this? No. Thank you very much. I don't know how much further.
That's cap. A deposition ain't gonna ask you that, man. The fuck? They're gonna ask you all type of shit. When's the first time you ever heard X? X claimed that you copied the song. When's the first time you heard that song? Who put you up on that song? Hey, did you reach out to X when he was in prison? Who did you know on his side? But they're gonna ask him a million fucking questions. Yo, see, the judge doesn't know the culture shit. The judge deals with all type of cases. I know what the fuck the lawyer's gonna ask.
I don't know what his questions are. I don't know what else he has. I understand what I'm saying.
Yes, but let me address two things, Judge. One is, I appreciate the court's indulgence in limiting the scope of any deposition that may or may not take place. That's the first thing that I wanted to address. I appreciate that. The second thing, Judge, is that I still believe, and I'm not even getting to the fact that the service was bad. I'm addressing the order to show cause itself and what it was entered based on. Order to show causes need to be based on the actual subpoena itself, right? The actual California subpoena itself, the service that is effectuated properly, okay, and a CNA that this individual did not show up to that deposition. What's attached to that motion, Judge, is number one, an affidavit that is not an appropriate affidavit. It is making reference to a subpoena that was signed on January 19th. I'm not even talking about the service itself. Let's assume the service was good, okay? If we assume the service is good, we don't have a CNA. We have an affidavit that says that there was a subpoena dated January 19th of 2023. We have a notice that's dated January 19th of 2023. And we have an affidavit from the individual in California that doesn't address whether or not there was, and what's in the court file, Judge. It doesn't rise to that level of an order to show cause. And the order,
If he still even works.
All right, let me just get the judge's last word on this and then we're off for this, all right?
Knowingly just disregard the subpoena, but that they have their view as to whether or not these are properly served or were done properly. So at this point, I will set aside the show cause order because I think it's been answered. But what I've told counsel, and counsel he seems receptive to, is, you know, there's a certain amount of wheel spinning that goes along.
I get it.
We can continue to try until we get it perfect. At some point, they will, or Michael.
oh,
But
I know Mr. Padilla, he will.
he will camp out at that gate. When JJ walks out there, he'll say, he's over here. If he still even works there anymore. I don't know.
Mysterious JJ,
But
yes.
the bottom line of the thing is, if we're gonna make this happen, let's make this happen. Let's do it at a time that is the most convenient. Just in.
I will.
All right, so there's a bunch of nothing.
Okay, and then also, Judge.
So all right, so essentially what happened is they're not holding Drake in contempt. So Drake will not be getting arrested. Essentially it's going to be an ongoing conversation of, hey, okay, number one, you have to serve him correctly, but also you need to show and tell why you need Drake in court. Again, Drake is a billionaire at this point. You're not getting a billionaire in court for 4 dusty niggas who killed X. It will never fucking happen. He got the best of the best working for him, and you're an idiot if you think otherwise, all right? Anyway, Drake did do an interview. Drake, Barstool Sports,